It's raining today. It's been raining a lot. Spring has sprung. Recently, I set up a naturalistic enclosure for a population of isopods. I put a bunch of roly-polies in a plastic tub so I could watch them grow. Kind of a pet project, you could say. I've been keeping a journal, something I've never done before and never thought I'd do in my life. It helps me keep tabs on all the goings-on in and around the tub. The first video is mostly about setting everything up, creating the enclosure, and hunting for isopods. So I'm sure you're curious to see how things have been progressing. Long story short, everything seems to be going really well. Lately, I've been trying to let my enclosure soak up some free nature water. I figured rain would have much more nutrition and beneficial microbes in it than the water that comes out of my hose. I've resisted adding too many more isopods to the enclosure, but I could not resist holding onto this guy. I believe that this is Trachelopus rathkii, or Rathke's woodlouse. I'm not sure if my picture does justice to how pretty this isopod is in person. It looks like polished burl or rosewood. I see a lot of isopods pretty much every day, mostly in my garden or on the walks that I take with my wife. They're absolutely everywhere around here. But you have to go off trail to find the best spots, though. Just look out for prickly burrs. Also, I've been seeing lots of beautiful butterflies and big fat bumblebees flying around, sucking up all the nectar. And the slugs have finally woken up. There's spiders crawling all over everything as well. And worms bigger than my feet just casually slime their way around. Also, these things. At first, I thought that they were some kind of crane fly, but they're actually a species of ichneumon wasp or Darwin wasp. Specifically, I think Onychospilus ergatus, a parasitic nocturnal wasp that mostly preys on the caterpillars of several species of moth. You can find information online that they are stingless, generally harmless to humans. But in my experience with insects and creepy crawlies, if it has a mouth, it can bite you. If it has a stinger, it could sting you. Be careful and safe when handling critters that you're unfamiliar with. So, back to critters that I am familiar with. Thought maybe it would be a good idea to get a rough estimate of the population of isopods in the tub. And when I say rough, I mean as rough as it gets. I am heavily guesstimating here. I counted 20 in the Tupperware, 8 in the glass jar, and 8 on the bark. That's 36, plus or minus the odd few that I've tossed in there after the fact. Conservatively, I would say that we've seeded the tub with a population of about 40 isopods, of at least 3 different species. Plus, maybe one more surprise species. Today, I laid my eyes on a completely white isopod. I have no clue if this is an albino morph of like a common variety, or a juvenile pre-pigmentation, or like a different kind altogether. But it is exciting, isn't it? So previously I had remarked that the potato bait didn't work very well. Well, I think that was more a matter and issue of with timing. Isopods like potato. Isopods really like potato. Safe to say, isopods fucking love potato, and putting one on the ground outside for a few days will probably attract more than a handful. I'm finding that my isopods seem to be most active at night, but I've also seen them out and about during the day. I think they're fairly sensitive creatures, sensitive to light and sounds and movement, but I'm not 100% sold on them being nocturnal. Maybe some species are, but I think the ones that are around me are impacted by atmospheric conditions more than anything. They like it when it's a bit warm and a bit wet and a bit shady. I'm sure there's like a sex joke in there somewhere. So instead of blasting them in the face with a flashlight, I came up with this thing. I wrapped a piece of paper around a flashlight to create a kind of makeshift paper lantern. It gives off dim light, enough to see but not so intense that it burns little retinas to a crisp. And I got myself a tripod to try to get some better footage in the future. So popping open the lid every time I want to peek at the little freaks isn't ideal, according to everything I've read. So I decided to snag this little puppy. Kind of perfect for what I was envisioning. Looking good. So pretty much I just drilled through the plastic. It sits pretty securely, and you can set it up looking at a few different angles. See you later, soldier. Good luck at your mission. I don't know about you guys, but I could literally sit there and watch my sketchy motel security footage of isopods for hours. How many did you count? It's endless entertainment when they're active. Otherwise, it just kind of looks like this. Just a log and a rock. Now we have the mesh positioned above the moss. I just have been misting the enclosure through that. I've barely taken the lid off these last few days, and I think the little boogers appreciate that. Also, I've been told that isopods like cucumber, so I gave the goobers a few slices. I cut out some of the seeds to try to plant for my own, so maybe soon I won't have to buy a whole damn cucumber just for a tiny piece. That's pretty much it for the isopods. It's a lot of wait and watch and hope that you catch something interesting. I think that's due to how I set up the enclosure. It's really done up to be more comfortable and natural for them, as opposed to be optimized for viewing them whenever I wanted. And for the moment, that's fine with me. In the meantime, I decided to get started on 2 small side projects. First up, I got another tub, smaller one this time, and I went to the supply store and I got some of the good stuff. Big element of my future enclosures is going to be having a supply of moss. So instead of completely harvesting everything around my house, I want to set up a moss propagation station. Much like with the isopods, I've never done anything like this before, so we'll see how it goes. Pretty much everything I've read online sounds pretty similar and simple. Get something to collect moss with. Collect some moss. Look how gorgeous that is. Wash the moss. We don't want any hitchhikers. I got 3 types, it seems. Some of that goblet moss from before, and 2 additional species. Mist down the substrate, and then plant the moss. I'm hoping that it turns into a magical moss forest, but we'll see. For the second small project, I'm not joking when I emphasize small. All right, here. Look at this picture. What do you see? Notice anything at all? Some dirt and a wood chip? Wrong! I've been driving myself insane catching these barely bigger than microscopic little pricks known as springtails. My camera isn't good enough to show you much of anything that's this small, so here, look at some fuzzy footage. Springtails are hexapods, relative to insects, but instead of insecta, springtails belong to the class Collembola. They're very small. Most are less than 1/4 of an inch long. They also possess a furcula, a specialized appendage they hold folded up underneath their body that, when released, propels them into the air. Hence, springtail. They're omnivorous little critters, categorized into 3 orders: Entomobryomorpha, Poduromorpha, and Symphypleona, and sometimes maybe Neolipleona. Scientists disagree. And they're broadly split into 4 main body forms, depending on the environment that they're found in. Atmobiotic, up on the surface and around aquatic plants. Epidaphic, in the upper litter and inside logs. Hemiadaphic, in the lower litter and decomposing organics. And Euadaphic, found underground in the humus layer. And that's just the beginning. As you can see, despite being such small creatures, they're really quite interesting. The reason I'm interested in them is that when paired with isopods, they work like a dream team. They are like the peanut butter and jelly of the detritus layer. Both feed on decaying matter, just at a different scale. Both help aerate the soil, and both aid in the spread of beneficial fungi and bacteria. A definite case of cooperative cohabitation. So obviously we need to get ourselves some springtails going pronto. So let's watch attempt number 1. I'll just say this, don't follow attempt number 1. It started with some wood chips, where I see the most springtails in my garden. Then I microwaved them to disinfect them, because that's what it says to do online. It got real steamy and made my house smell like wet campfire. Then I let it cool all the way down and gave it a good mist. They do need air, so I thought to expertly punch some holes in the lid and to not crack the shit out of it. That would be bad. Then I added the little shits in there. Online, there's a lot of info on what's best to feed them. I decided on a few grains of white rice. Then I stuck it in the bigger enclosure to protect it. Well, guess what? They all escaped through the air holes, I think. I did not notice before, but apparently they can climb on glass. So, probably, they can also crawl up Tupperware. I stopped noticing them crawling around in there, and when I went through it, there was 1 left inside. So, commence attempt number 2. This time, we're going airtight. And no, you ain't grilling them up. Apparently, lump charcoal is an ideal substrate for springtails. Besides, I'm a propane man myself. So crush up the big bits into little bits, pour in some water, and you're off to the races. This time we're gonna feed them nooch. I love to eat it, so I'm sure they'll love it too. Captured quite a few more this time, and I noticed that there appears to be 2 different types jumping around. A smaller, lighter colored striped morph, and a larger, darker colored morph with a yellow band around it. I'm not sure if these are different species, or if the smaller ones are an immature stage of the larger ones. I'm hoping I can get some clearer pictures and footage of them soon. A separate reason that I want to farm some springtails up is because I want to start another enclosure for another super interesting creature, one that's just a bit misunderstood. Daddy Longlegs, or well, rather a certain type of daddy longlegs. Opiliones, harvestmen. Colloquially, harvestmen cellar spiders, and crane flies are all referred to as daddy long legs. Get more creative with your naming conventions, people. I found these beautiful critters hanging out under a random piece of wood in the woods. Coincidentally, while they're arachnids belonging to the class Arachnida, these guys are not spiders at all. Is anything named properly in nature? See, this is a spider that was chilling on that same piece of wood. So what is the difference? Harvestmen have 8 long legs, 6 of which are used to skitter about, and 2 of which are used as an analog for long antennae feelers. Unlike spiders, who have their 2 body segments separated by a narrow waist, harvestmen have a singular fused body segment. Unlike spiders, who have many pairs of eyes, harvestmen usually have only 2 eyes. Unlike spiders, who spin silk and have venom glands, harvestmen do not have silk or venom glands at all. Instead, some species have scent glands that can excrete a strong plastic bleach-smelling odor. Furthermore, unlike many of the other arachnids, they do not have book lungs. Instead, they breathe through trachea, and they exhibit direct copulation, as males have a penis. Bizarre creatures, to say the least. And what do you think is a primary component of their omnivorous diet? You guessed it. Springtails! Unfortunately, I don't have pictures of them, but I have seen baby harvestmen wandering around my garden. They're incredibly tiny, but you can see them if you get down to their level. Once I get the moss growing good and my springtails established, man, I got so many ideas. I cannot wait. Once again, we've come to the end, and I really hope you enjoyed this one. What'd you think? I'd love to hear your comments. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything in the future. You have a good rest of your day, and take it easy. While I was editing this one, I noticed 2 things. Maybe I have a subconscious predisposition or something. One of my favorite movies is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, in which essentially gigantic isopods called Omu play a pivotal role in the plot. And one of my favorite video games is Pikmin 2, in which essentially a gigantic harvestman plays the role as the final boss. Coincidence?